Hello everyone, my name is Jasmine and welcome back to my channel. Today we've got this really fun birthday card that we're going to do some heat embossing on vellum, some layered stamping, and some tone on tone on the background. So I'm starting off with the Many Mandala stamp set from Concord 9th. And this stamp set has 4 different stamps that you can layer together. They fit into one another from small up to the largest one. So I've got some vellum in my MISTI. And this is the largest of the mandala stamps in the stamp set. And we're going to use some Versamark. So we're going to do heat embossing with each layer of the stamp set as it gets smaller. I did treat this with a powder tool before I stamped because if you've used vellum before, you know it's notoriously sticky for static electricity and it likes to keep your embossing powder where you don't want it. So make sure you do it with a powder tool or a dryer sheet, something like that. And that'll just help with powder sticking and removing it later on. So I've heat embossed that, and that first powder was Zing Purple Metallic. Now with this stamp set, they give you this really helpful, really handy little template that you can use to line up your stamps as they get smaller, because it can be kind of hard to see exactly where it's going to hit. So you can use a little template to line things up and help you place your stamps so that it lines up perfectly. And I found that really helpful. So going with the second largest stamp, and Versamark. And the embossing powder we're going to use for the second layer is Lindy Stamp Gang Hollyhock Scarlet Plum. And if you've never used the Lindy's embossing powders, they're all two-toned and they're all gorgeous. Very shimmery and very pretty. I'm going to be die cutting this so I don't worry too much about anything that sticks outside of the mandala because it won't show. But using a powder tool will help with that, and you want to be careful because with vellum especially, your fingerprints will be kind of extra sticky on vellum. So something you want to handle it as little as possible within the stamping area. And for our third layer, I'm going to use Lindy Stamp Gang Angel Wings Peacock. And a little tip for your heat embossing if you have trouble with it is to use a good quality vellum, and when you're heat embossing any kind of paper, but vellum especially because vellum warps very easily, let your gun run for a good 30 to 60 seconds so it gets good and hot before you apply it to your paper. And you're going to apply more heat for less time, which leads to less warping. And with vellum, you can also heat it from both sides, and that tends to lessen the warping as well. So this is the third largest of the set. And I like to double stamp when I'm using Versamark because it's difficult to see, just to make extra sure that I got every little line in the stamp. And this one is a white, but it has like a teal reflect to it, so it's really pretty. And it shows up nicely against the vellum. So for the smallest mandala in here, we're going to use Lindy Stamp Gang Midnight Violet. This looks black in some light and a really dark, deep eggplant purple in the light when you can get it to reflect. It's really interesting. And when you're using metallic finish embossing powders, it's easier to see it shift because it'll go from powdery to shiny. So this is the largest of the dies in the set. And that tape is frog tape. It's a painter's tape, and it's a really low tack, so it comes off the paper really easily. So next we're going to work on the background, and I'm going in with some Lawn Fawn Minty Fresh ink, and I'm using some Strathmore Bristol Smooth cardstock. And I'm going to run this through my die cutting machine when I'm all done, so and I'll use MFT Wonky Stitches die for that. So the finish size on this background will end up being about 4 by 5 1/4. And if you have trouble ink blending, I used to use Nina for my ink blending, and it came out decent. I wasn't unhappy with it, but when I tried the Bristol Smooth cardstock, it was a game changer. The inks, any kind of dye ink that I've used this works with, it goes on like butter. It just smooths on nicely. You don't get any of the tool marks or weird lines in it. It's just really super smooth. So that's the first tip. And the second one is when you're using your blending tool, if you use a round one or one of the rectangle ones or a sponge dauber, don't put the full surface on flat to the surface of the paper. You want to use an angle. And it just makes it easier for the tool to smooth over the paper, and you're not going to run the risk of hitting on the edges. And it looks like we're not getting any color deposit, but I'll show you in a second that you really do. It's a really pale green. It's a pale mint green, really pastel. And it's a really lovely color. It's just hard to see when it's just by itself. So I've put some white next to it, and you can see that we did get some ink deposit. And it's really smooth, and it's really even, and there's no tool marks. So that one is Minty Fresh. And then just around the edges, I'm going to go in with Mermaid. And this one's probably a couple shades darker, but does have a little bit more blue in it. So it's more of a tealy shade versus a true green. But I thought that it went really well. I just wanted a hint of dark edge, not something too much. And the color of the background will help the color of that peacock embossing powder to stand out better. So I want to do a little bit of tone-on-tone stamping because I wanted the backgrounds to still be subtle, but to show, have a little more excitement to it. So I used the same stamps as we used on the Vellum piece and just kind of scattered them around the background using the Minty Fresh ink. So that it's tone on tone, it's going to be subtle in the background, but you'll definitely see it, but it won't be too bold. And that just keeps the soft look of it. And it keeps the focus on the Vellum piece that we're going to use for the focal point. So I've kind of placed my mandala there to kind of get the placement for my sentiment. And there's a pretty wide variety of sentiments in this stamp set. I started with just a note because I wasn't quite sure what I wanted. And then I changed my mind to the happy birthday that's in there. And then I'm going to use Sugar Plum by Lawn Fawn as well to stamp my sentiment. So I've just got a top folding card base, and I'm using some cream cardstock from Ellen Hudson. And I've attached that using some score tape. And then I'm going to use some 1/8 inch wide score tape on the back of the vellum because I forgot to add my stick-it. And I'm just going to, it's easy to hide on this one because I've got the darker embossing powder on the edge, so you won't see it. And I use score tape for all of my cards. There's very few that I don't use it on just because it's super sticky. It does not fall apart, does not come off, and you can tear it with your fingers. So that's why I like it. That's why I choose to use it. And it comes in a variety of different widths, from 1/8 inch wide like I'm using here, all the way up to, you can get rolls of 2 inches wide, 3 inches wide, and then sheets. So it's really versatile. You can use it for pretty much anything. So attach that down, and that finishes up the card. So let me know what you think. Thank you for subscribing. It really helps out my channel when you subscribe and like and share, all that fun stuff. You can find me on Instagram and Pinterest, Facebook. And thanks for stopping by. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know what you think, and we will catch you guys next time. Have a great day. Bye-bye, guys.